But all of a sudden I saw so simply and deeply that the three principles really meant only two things. It meant that we are using this incredible gift of the power of thought to create what we see in life, what we experience in life, the meaning we make. It's all our own doing. It's all our own thinking, period. And consciousness just makes that thinking look real. So we would swear that it is real. That's one thing. And the other thing it means is that we are perfect, whole, everything we're looking for in life, peace, love, wisdom. It is part of us automatically. And the only way that we cannot walk around looking like we are that is by using this incredible gift of the power of thought against ourselves.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Might Help, Can't Hurt, Conversations with Leaders, Doers, and Friends. And my leader-doer friend today is Dr. Jack Pransky. I've never called you Dr. Jack, but do you go?
For good reason.
Okay. Let's go with the Jack Pransky, Ph.D. Yeah. What did you have your doctorate in?
Community psychology, interestingly.
Okay. Well, that kind of fits with entire direction of your career.
Yes.
No, and the other thing that I was trying to remember was our first conversation. So I'm thinking 2008.
Could have been.
And you were one of the few people who had a website. Which is how I carefully chose you to be the one to talk to. So you were pretty much the first one I could find. Because I wanted to explore the understanding and the principles and whatever it was at the time. I really had no idea. And what I remember about the call, and you might remember it very differently, but what I remember was we chatted for about 15, 20 minutes about thought. And you were telling me about thought, and I was sharing because I worked with thought in neurolinguistic programming and all that. And you very gracefully said at a certain point, hey, can we start again and pretend you have no idea what I'm talking about? Which I did, and I thought it was funny. And what I remember most from the end of the call was something that had looked like a big problem didn't, and I didn't understand why.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all by way of bio. It's a very informal bio. You can read his real bio in the link. But one of Jack's books at the time was called Somebody Should Have Told Us. And I assumed, did the title come from the fact that that's what everyone says when they learn about
what everyone was saying?
Yeah, that's I still hear that. Why did nobody tell us this?
Right.
And I used to carry that book around like a Bible. Like it was a comfort blanket for me. And again, I didn't know why. I just felt calmer when I read it. And it actually was my accompaniment. I had one last bout of depression with you. So I was pretty much past depression when I had my first epiphany watching Sid. But then I did have one last little run. We were on holiday in Mexico. And I would just this isn't your book, but I would just have your book with me and just sit down and read it. And it was this weird situation where I had all the symptoms physically, but I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Never had that experience before of being okay while symptomatic. And then it was done. And that was back in 2008. So I owe you many debts of gratitude, but that's the one that's most tangible for me.
I'm grateful for that, Michael. I think because you were carrying my book around, it's probably learning by osmosis.
My mom, but my mom has a PhD in organic chemistry from the University of Brussels. And she admitted to me once that she used to study by putting her textbooks under her pillow so that the information could get in there while she slept. So there might be something.
I remember seeing a picture in National Geographic where these monks would Buddhist monks would walk under a big shelf full of the sacred texts, hoping that they would pick something up.
Yeah. I once actually, this is a real story. This always sounds fake to me, even though I was there. I was walking through a bookshop. I used to live in bookshops. And a book literally fell on my head. And I picked it up, and the title was God Winks, A Guide to Coincidences in Our Lives. And to this day, I don't know why I didn't buy it. It was like, I don't
think didn't buy it.
More obvious than that. I wound up reading it like 3 years later. But I just always thought of all the books to fall on your head, that was the best.
That's great.
So for you, how did you get from, or well, actually, maybe I've got the sequence wrong. I was going to ask, how did you get from being a PhD in this to studying this radical alternative approach to things? Or were you already interested in this work and that's what kind of guided you to do the academic version?
Well, the interesting thing was, it was long before I got a PhD that I got involved with the principles.
Okay.
Like, I had my experience with Sid before I even thought about getting a PhD.
So let's start there, because I always forget that not everybody has any idea what we're talking about. So we both said Sid. And so who was Sid? What was your experience with Sid?
Sydney Banks was an ordinary laborer who was in near Vancouver. And he was going about his business, minding his own business. And all of a sudden, he had an enlightenment experience where he saw how things worked, how our experience of life is created moment to moment, and how behind all of that, we are perfect, healthy, whole. And when he started talking to me about it, because I was writing a book about these incredible results that happened in the Modello housing project. And I was just trying to get to the source. Source was Sid Banks. That's why I was talking to him. And he essentially at that time blew my mind apart. I can't even describe what happened to me because it's indescribable, but I felt very disoriented. And I just knew that all I knew was that he knew that he was speaking truth. And that's all I knew. And I would have to say that from that moment on, the world looked different to me.
Different how?
Different in the sense that all along I was thinking the world worked from the outside in. Like if I'm looking at a tree outside my window, and that I would think the tree was giving me a feeling of peacefulness by looking at it, for example. Well, not everybody who looks at this very same tree gets a feeling of peacefulness. So there's something else going on. And that something else going on is the way that I'm using my thinking to make meaning of that tree for me. That was like a completely radical idea. I mean, it sounds so simple and logical now, but then it was like such a wrench. I couldn't even wrap my head around the fact that I was the one who was inadvertently making up my own experience of life. Like I was the one with my creative power of thought who was coming up with what feelings that I ended up living with. It was just totally right. Of course, that idiot that just did that to me out there was making me feel bad. of course that's what it was, because it absolutely looks that way. But it's just my own thinking about it, which I'm not aware that I'm doing. It just shifted everything.
Now, when you saw that, did you start trying to control your thinking?
No, I did not. I just knew that whatever I was thinking was what I got. You know, it's like what you see is what you get. Whatever I was thinking, that's what I got as an experience. And just knowing that was enough to shift my experience and what I ended up taking seriously, basically,
Yeah.
what I ended up taking to heart.
How long was it after you had that experience that you could talk about it in a way where people didn't look at you like this?
Probably 10 years.
So there was a learning curve.
Partly, yes. I mean, what there's just no way to describe what I ended up experiencing through my connection with Sid Banks. It was way beyond my intellect.
Mm.
And I couldn't come up with the words to describe it. Still can't.
Yeah.
It took me a while for my intellect to catch up to my experience. And when that happened, I suddenly shifted. I was able to talk more. But then it wasn't until about maybe 7 years ago, after you and I talked, that I really felt like I dropped into a new realm of understanding where all of a sudden, it just looked very, very simple to me.
And
And
was there sort
this,
of a trigger for that, or was it just walking down the street and, oh,
there may have been, but I don't remember what it was.
yeah.
I really don't. But all of a sudden, I saw so simply and deeply that the three principles really meant only two things. I mean, to me, I'm just talking about for me,
Yeah.
it meant that we are using this incredible gift of the power of thought to create what we see in life, what we experience in life, the meaning we make. It's all our own doing. It's all our own thinking, period. And consciousness just makes that thinking look real. So we would swear that it is real. That's one thing. And the other thing it means is that we are perfect, whole, everything we're looking for in life, peace, love, wisdom. It is part of us automatically. And the only way that we cannot walk around looking like we are that is by using this incredible gift of the power of thought against ourselves. And that's all there is to me now. And when Sid Banks kept saying to us, "You're making it too complicated," I had no idea what he was talking about then, but now I do.
Yeah. Well, you wrote what to me is probably certainly in the top 3 best tweetable descriptions of the principles, which is, all we are is peace, love, and wisdom, and the power to create the illusion that we're not. If I've gotten that
Now,
correct.
that came to me in a flash
Yeah.
when I was walking on the beach one day.
Yeah.
And left to my devices of my own intellect, I never could have come up with that in a million years.
Well, but see, one of the things I've always enjoyed about spending time with you is you and I are actually writers. I would put you in that class. In others, we write. It's not that we have written something. It's what we do. And for
Yeah.
me, the gift of writing, or one of the gifts of writing, is you get to read what you wrote and go, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And so I've always been fascinated by that connection to the unknown, to this divine source or whatever it is, where something can come from nothing and it has that flavor.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing that suddenly our mind can clear enough where we get these insights from wisdom from God knows where.
Yeah.
I mean, when that thought came to me, it almost like knocked me over. I
Yeah.
almost landed on the sand.
Yeah. Well, it got a hell of a lot of likes when I reposted it on Instagram. But I mean, it's the thing about it is it's such a clean, to my mind, description of the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, there isn't anything else.
Yeah.
Both of those 2 points that I mentioned are included within it.
Yeah. And yet I assume both of us are going to keep writing books. I don't know. You're retired now, so I don't know if you are, but
I'm writing a book about music right now. So
okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. So let me move forward from that. And how did that play out in your life? Like, so it's like you're having this amazing realization. You kind of know it's real, it's true. But now in your case, you didn't radically change your life for a while, or did you? Because you were already kind of exploring this and researching this and studying. And
do you mean when I had when that thought came to me?
yeah. So then, well, actually, I was thinking the first. So you
Oh,
meet
at first with
your world goes spinning
Sid
in your
Banks.
mind.
Yeah, I was really stressed out before that. And I was a highly driven person, and I had good relationships, but all of a sudden they got better. um, and I just started seeing, when you start seeing life from the inside in, when you always looked at it from the out, I mean the inside out, when you've always looked at it from the outside in,
Yeah.
it's just hard to see life the same way anymore. Um, so there were a lot of things that people would do that used to really upset me a lot. And it still happens from time to time. But now I know when I'm upset about it, it's not because of what they're doing, it's because of my own thinking.
Yeah.
And that that it makes you humble,
Yeah.
makes you really humble to know the reason I'm stressed, worried, anxious, bothered, depressed is because of my own doing.
Mhm.
There's a great deal of humility in that.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's really embarrassing when you catch on to the fact that you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. But then you realize you're doing the embarrassment too.
That's true. That's really, no, that's so true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. Now, Modello, and we don't have time to do Modello justice, but fortunately we don't have to because you've written a book now available as an audiobook, which we'll have
Yes,
links to
which I'm grateful for.
about the story. But do you have a sort of the short story version of the story for people who don't know it? Because I think it's an extraordinary story to be shared, and I love the way you've written it. But also, I kind of want to use that as a way forward because I want to explore something about social change, and I just think that's such a
Okay.
strong example.
The short story
Yeah,
is that Dr. Roger Mills learned from Sydney Banks in the same way that I did. And he decided to take this understanding into one of the most horrible housing projects around,
yeah,
low income, where there were uh, crack addicts, crack gangs shooting up the place every night. There were drug dealers on every corner. There were people were beating their kids. They were being beaten by their boyfriends on crack. They were alcoholics. It was just a horrible
mm,
place. And so Roger Mills decides that this is where he wants to, because he's a community psychologist himself, or he was, and he wanted to see whether this understanding could actually make changes in some of the most difficult places that there are.
Yeah.
And he proved that that could happen. And that's how I got into this originally, because I was looking at prevention projects.
Mhm.
I had never heard of this. I was studying them. I was writing a book about them. And yet these people's lives had changed to a level I had never seen in prevention before.
Mhm.
And that's how I got hooked. And then luckily I was able to write the story about it.
Yeah.
I just consider myself really fortunate to have done that.
Well, and it's an extraordinary story. And if I'm remembering it correctly, you actually got a Martin Luther King Prize for the book.
Yes,
Um,
very proud of that.
yeah.
But it's really the story that did it.
Oh,
Yeah,
you know, it's an interesting thing when you're a writer, like I find, is that I know it came through me. So I know
yeah,
it's not weird when people say, "Oh my God, I loved your book."
yeah,
But I also know it came from beyond me. So sometimes it is a little weird.
yeah.
I was listening to a writer once talk about it, and he was saying that well, really, it's not me. It comes from the divine. It comes from this. And somebody said, "Well, where do you get off charging money for it then?" And the guy stood there for a minute, and then he went, "Well, until God gets a PayPal account, I guess I'll do the billing."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, with the stories extraordinary as Modello, and then Homestead Gardens is the other one, Coliseum Gardens, you know, other communities where similar transformations took place. Why do you think it didn't catch on more? Because as far as I've seen, those three projects are sort of still the biggest project, and that was back in the 80s or early 90s.
Well, Homestead Gardens came directly out of Modello. It was the
Okay.
Modello people who actually made Homestead Gardens happen.
Oh, okay.
Coliseum Gardens came along as a result. It wasn't the first, but it was the first that really took hold after Modello and Homestead Gardens. And Roger at that time was seeing if the incredible results in Modello could spread to other places. That
Yeah.
was what he was trying to do at the time. This is my own theory.
Mm.
Right after Coliseum Gardens, he started changing his approach.
Okay.
And he had the thought, all we have to do is just go in and do training. And things will, people will grasp the understanding, and then it will take care of itself. Well, that's not what happened in Modello.
Yeah.
That's not what happened in Homestead Gardens. It's not what happened in Coliseum Gardens. And what happened there, they had staff people who were hired, who were trained in this understanding, who worked with people one-on-one, in groups, in classes, whatever they had to do to help this understanding get into seep into their consciousness. To me, that's what ended up changing people the most, is that contact. Now,
Yeah.
what they were, Roger and I'm not saying great things didn't happen after that, but
Mm.
didn't have the same impact. And it's for that reason, because they were trying to get the people who had trained, who might have been in other service providers
Mm.
from other agencies, um, the ones doing the work. And in some cases that worked, but in other cases it didn't.
Mm.
So
So
I'm a big proponent of getting these projects funded in a way that really going to work.
And is there anyone that you're aware of who's actively doing this work at the moment in that kind of community-based setting?
There are, I don't know them all, but in the UK, oh God, I wish I could remember their names. And then I was just talking with.
If you do later, we'll post links, just because I know people would be interested in supporting or at least learning more about it.
Great. And just yesterday, 2 days ago, I was talking with a friend of yours, Rob Cook.
Oh, yeah.
And Janet Riney.
Mm-hmm.
And they had both told me they would love, at different times they told me, they would love to do a Modello-like project around where they are somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Janet, and I thought, all of a sudden it came to me, because she was talking about a possible funding source. It came to me in a flash. They should do this jointly together, but in two separate areas. They should apply for it as like a twin program.
Twin grant, yeah.
Twin grant in two different areas. And both of them are now really psyched about it.
Oh, very cool.
And so I'm really hoping that it ends up happening.
Yeah. No, Rob's actually been a guest on the show, so people watch it.
Great guy. Great guy.
Now, for you, do you think that's, and I'm totally asking you to speculate. This is the world according to Jack Pransky, right? So,
that I can do. It doesn't mean anything, but I can do it.
Right. Do you think that sort of community-based work is the way forward for making social change, fundamental social change, or do you think it is a really important, really helpful placeholder for something more fundamental?
I personally think it's the way forward.
Okay.
The reason you asked the question earlier, why it didn't take hold, you try to describe that to somebody and they think that it can't possibly work that way. Like you're going to start with assuming that, not even assuming, knowing that people are whole and healthy already, and only their thinking gets in the way. And if they gain this understanding, somehow it's going to not only affect their lives, but ripple out and affect their relationships and their families, and then their neighbors, and then it's going to affect the rest of the community, and the community is going to end up making changes that change the conditions in that community. Unheard of. The whole field is trained in the opposite way. They've got to like even community organizers are taught to fan the flames of discontent.
Yeah.
You start with the fact that you've got rundown, overcrowded housing conditions, for example, and if you can't make any changes with the people unless you change that first. That's the prevailing view still to this day, and even though the research has not been great, by the way, that's one of the problems. Like Rod, bless his heart, Roger was not a great researcher.
Right.
And so therefore the entire academic world kind of poo-pooed the results because they were not scientifically done. But talk to the people whose lives were affected, you can't believe those changes that were made in people's lives. And they were real.
So do you have, and I'm aware your answer might be, it depends what time you ask me, but are you hopeful when you look out at the relative, within even my lifetime, chaos that's going on in social structures right now in the world?
Yes. And because the more disastrous things look, the more people are willing to be open to new answers.
Right.
That's just the way it seems to me. Now, We have an answer, but people don't like to hear that.
Right. They
And I'm
don't
not
like to
saying,
hear just the fact that we have an answer, or they
yeah,
don't
no,
want
exactly.
it. Right.
Yeah, and it's not our answer.
Yeah.
It is an answer that exists out there that really has had an effect on so many people's lives
Mm.
that it continues to spread very slowly throughout the world. And it's a miracle, really.
Mm.
One person, it started from one man who wasn't, who was just minding his business. And now, how many hundreds of thousands of people around the world now have this understanding that has changed their lives in a really positive and healthy way. And it's just a miracle to me.
Yeah.
And it's not going to stop. It's going to be way too slow for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's way too slow for me. But I know that when it takes hold one person at a time, like it does, it takes hold so solidly that it forms such a solid foundation that it's
Yeah.
going to be tough to knock it off its base.
Now, this is a slightly sideways thing, but I wanted to make sure to spend a bit of time. One of the things that I have always appreciated about your teaching, when you share about this understanding, is you are one of just a few people who really do emphasize listening over articulating.
Oh, man.
And I would love it if you could just spend a little time talking about A, what you mean by listening, because it's not necessarily what I thought listening was, but also why it
Yeah.
matters so much.
What I realized, it took me a long time to catch on to what I call deep listening was. I mean, I had gotten trained in listening,
Mm.
as active listening and, what you do as a counselor and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that it was the opposite of all that.
Mm.
It's my partner describes it like listening to the rain. I love that. It's just you're you get into you fall back into nothingness,
Mm.
and you or I'll just speak for myself. I get blank. I get blank, and I'm just taking the person in, and I start hearing things beyond anything that they're saying. God bless you. I hear I hear I hear things that they don't even know that they're talking about.
Mm.
And it's uncanny. And I have no idea how it happens, but it happens because universal mind is the energy of all things, and it's embedded in that energy. And that's what we're listening for. The answers that are already there, embedded in that energy. And if we're paying attention to the words, we're paying attention to what people are saying, we are not, we're going to be distracting ourselves away from where the answers lie.
Mm.
So I
Well,
don't know if that was a good explanation or not. But
it is, because I think the fear when I'm teaching, and the fear that comes out when people go, yeah, but if I don't listen for this, I'm going to seem like I don't care. I'm going to seem like I don't, like I wasn't paying attention, things like that. Whereas my experience is the opposite.
yes, people can feel it.
Yeah.
Like we're right there with them,
Yeah.
right there. They can feel that. Even though my mind is a blank, I am, in a sense, I'm in a state of love with people.
Yeah.
People can feel it. So they get more open.
Yeah.
Their minds relax more. They want to listen more when they feel like they're being truly listened to.
Well, I often think of and it's a cliche, but it's a good one, that People don't care what you think until they know that you care.
It's a cliche. That's a great one.
Yeah. And interestingly to me, more than anything you would do, when you really listen to somebody, that they know that you care.
Yes. They can feel that you care.
Yeah.
You're right there with them.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when I did catch on to that for myself, it made everything easier because I didn't have to say anything until something struck me.
Yeah.
And then I would say it. So I get into a state of I don't know. 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 I'm not actually saying that to myself, but that's the way it is until boom, something hits me and I know something. And then I'll say it and I'll go back to listening.
Well, what's interesting though is it's I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. It's not, oh no, I don't know. I got to figure it out.
Exactly.
It's just I don't know.
It's a relief not to know.
Yeah.
Not to think that we have to know.
Yeah.
The answers are there. They're beyond us. All we have to do is listen for them. And you know, the more quiet our mind gets, the better off we're going to be like that.
Now, do you find that you're able to deep listen to yourself?
I do deep listen to myself because I like to be guided by wisdom.
Yeah.
I don't listen to myself unless I know that I need to be guided by wisdom, and it probably to my detriment.
Right.
In other ways, but excuse me, if I need, if I know that I need to make a decision about something, I want to be guided by wisdom. If I try to figure it out, I'm going to muck myself up. So I want to fall back into the formless, have my mind clear, and out of that clarity, clearness or something, I'm guided in where I need to go. And I regularly rely on that when it has to do with, I relied on that about whether I should be in the relationship I'm in.
Yeah.
Because their logic said no. We kept bumping up against each other. Logic said no. Wisdom said yes. And I listened to wisdom. And it has really paid off.
Oh, that's lovely. There's a last question I ask everybody who comes on the show. And so I have the power temporarily to ordain you emperor of the universe. And so I'm going to do that. And what I want to know is, what's your first decree as emperor of the universe? What's the first thing you lay out for the humans?
Everybody is required to operate from love.
Nice.
It's a requirement. And if they don't know how to do that, or they don't want to do that, they've got to learn how to do that. And the way to learn how to do that is by falling back into this same essence of themselves where it already is. Because that's connected to the purest part of universal mind. That's a good decree. I've never thought about it before. I like the question. I like my answer came to me, and so.
Yeah. No, that'll go in the top 10 decrees. We'll put it up there. Jack, an absolute pleasure. Really nice to see you. It's been a while.
Really nice to see you too, Michael. It's always a pleasure.
All right. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you all.
I really hope you enjoyed today's show. You can learn more at michaelneal.org. Please go over to iTunes to subscribe and rate the podcast. Until next time, have fun, learn heaps, and I'll talk with you soon.